There we go. Alright, hello everybody. I'm Isaac Yepes with the UTEP College Republicans, and this is the last video we're going to do for the year, obviously. We had a lot of interesting things happen. We got to talk to Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, Gavin McInnes, Matt Christensen, Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, and Some Dumb American. We did have Vernaculus on earlier, but it was a total train wreck. We had some stuff going on our end, he had some stuff going on his end, and we're going to actually have him in person in March. So if you guys are interested in watching that, please join us. I think it's going to be March 17th. I'm not entirely sure. The only scheduled dates we have right now is Michael Tracy will be here in person February 6th and 7th. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson will be doing a live talk with us again on February 14th. And I think for the year, obviously, a lot of feedback there. We had a lot of interesting things happen. So I hope you guys can join us for this because it's going to be very interesting. Now, we had a lot of interesting talks with the guests we did have this semester. I apologize if I'm fumbling around. I don't have a script or anything. Now, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, he really fired up the organization when he said, "You guys are in the fight of your lives right now. You may not know it, but it's happening all around you." Now, he exposed us to the information that in New York City, the infamous Bill 16 that's going through legislation right now in Canada is going on already in New York, where if you misgender somebody, it is a finable offense. Now, I'm not really sure how the logistics of it work or what, but it is kind of an alarming authoritarian piece of legislation. Now, he recommended a book to us called, I apologize if I butcher it, Gulag Archipelago, and he said it was a 2,000-page scream against everything that's happening right now from the social justice warriors and the authoritarian left in general. Now, I hope to be able to read at least half of it before we have him again on February 14th. It should be quite a good read, and we'll discuss that. It might be a little fun this time, and we'll have it recorded. This last time we didn't on November 1st, and I'm still kind of upset about that. But we had a great talk with him, and he's an awesome guy. So then we were originally going to have Edgy Sphinx. He had a family emergency, so Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, she was kind enough to do this last minute, and we discussed Missouri, the destruction of the family unit, and how she actually turned away from feminism because she found that, I think she wasn't happy, or I can't remember, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she was very lighthearted and encouraged us all to have kids and stuff. She does have a financial background, and she graduated a few years ago at Mizzou, and she said what she had been seeing out of that campus was not at all what she had remembered. So, I mean, it is an anecdotal perspective, but I don't recall ever seeing any hysterics or scandals coming out of that campus before, and it's kind of alarming, to see a professor call for muscle and incite violence against another student, or at least battery. Then we had Matt Christensen, who, I mean, he is quite the intellect, I must say. I take a lot of cues from him as far as shaping my worldview. I am conservative, but the way that he takes information and views it and then analyzes it is something I think we should all strive for. There have been times when I've formulated uninformed opinions, and sometimes I have to take a step back and look at what he's going to say about it, just to ensure that I'm not just hardlining or something like that. And I'm trying to get better at not being so partisan and looking at things objectively, but it is a difficult task. Now, he went over his actual background, and he campaigned for Obama both times, and he voted for him both times, and he spoke about the fallout, the political fallout and personal fallout that he had with his friends that could not fathom and could not accept the idea that one of their friends would vote for Trump, or even just question some of their principles and perspectives. Now, I find that not to be unique to the left. I mean, right wing, we have our own problems, and I do see alienation sometimes, from hardliners to neocons and to the alt-right, and so I don't think we can really point a finger at them and accuse them of something we're also guilty of. That goes, I think, to Dr. Goebbels or Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist who said always accuse your enemy of what you're guilty of. And I don't want to go down that road. I think everybody needs to be criticized. And he also brought up an interesting point about the rise of the right wing in this upcoming, or in this past election, where the entire government is now run majority red. Now, he said that it should not really be a place of celebration for us to have such a top to bottom right wing rule, or even if it were a left wing rule, because that's when an ideology becomes authoritarian and starts to lose sight of what their original goals were in the effort to get more power. And I think that's what we saw with the left, and that's why this election went so far against them. But he brought up that you want to mix, because you constantly want the best ideas to be put forth. And I think that's a great sentiment to hold, because I do want the best ideas to move our nation forward. And if we're going to have that, it can't just be dictated by one side. Then we spoke to, briefly, Vernaculus. His lecture was going to be on the license to offend, the First Amendment. Again, train wreck, but we will have him again. And he is critical of both sides entirely. I mean, he doesn't spare anyone. He even, Mike Cernovich, a hack. I want to say Milo too. I'm not sure. Hold off on that one. But of course, Cenk Uygur and all the regulars. But I'm really excited to have him again, and it should be very interesting to have him in person and have my peers hear criticism to their face, and it's not partisan criticism, it's objective criticism, I think. I don't really hear him say anything unfair. Following him, we had Gavin McInnes, and that was just a bunch of fun. We spoke about the fake hate crime hoaxes, the Huffington Post being the publication that came up with the 80% rape rate coming out of Mexico. And that doesn't necessarily mean that Mexicans are doing it or Mexicans are rapists. And I'm really surprised that nobody ever fired back, or maybe they did. I just didn't pay attention, but nobody fired back on that. That Huffington Post, kind of a pillar of the hardcore left, was the one originally to speak on the matter and put these numbers up to where it shows an overwhelming majority of the people crossing this border are having this happen to them. Then we talked to some dumb American, and she mentioned what was happening to Germany, and said that they kind of need to be put in an international timeout because they're ruining the world again, and the debt and the Chinese buying it up, and I think we'll continue the discussion in the spring. Now, locally, we've been having some of the Standing with Standing Rock protests, and I have to say I do respect them because they're not going into hysterics, they're not harassing anybody, they're not harming anyone. They are doing exactly what our system intended, which is they're financially boycotting institutions that they disagree with, namely, I think it's Wells Fargo. They organized a boycott, and they all started to pull out their money from their accounts and close their accounts out. So I think if you want to protest and you want to change the way an institution is doing business, or you want to show your disagreement with them, then that is the way to do it. You don't throw a hissy fit, you don't do anything like attack people or insult people, you just take your money elsewhere. I think that's the most effective way to do it, and I think that's probably the way you can get your point across the most to the higher ups, rather than harassing the middleman and the wage workers, which is always so unfair because it's they're just trying to make a living, and then people go and screw with them. I think we saw it with the social justice warriors in California, who were putting up signs all over a bookstore saying that they should close, or it was letters. They were writing letters and posting them, and it was just really unfair, and I couldn't imagine being in that environment, but that's beside the point. Also, some dumb American, she mentioned the I guess she touched down on it a little bit, but the horseshoe theory. And I was listening to an interview on the Rubin Report yesterday, where it shows that both sides have authoritarian views. Authoritarianism is not unique to either side. It's once one side gets enough power, they become tyrannical. And SDA, she mentioned that the Trump tweets about the safe space in the theater, it kind of shows that both sides aren't actually all that different. It all depends on who's the one that wants to play victim, and I think that goes deeper into people selling out their principles for the consolidation of power. Even Sargon of Akkad, he mentioned it with Paul Joseph Watson. Now, I disagree with selling out principles for power, but again, I'm not in a position to gain anything by selling out. So it's weird. I mean, you can criticize all you want until you're in the position, and I'm not excusing it. I'm trying to get into the mindset of how this would happen or why this happens. Because everybody can see it now, especially with social media. Everybody can see your every move if you're a public figure. Now, we also had a Not My President march, which was in downtown. I think there was a couple hundred people in it, and a lot of professors from UTEP, which I thought was a little alarming. And it's part of the reason why we started doing this in the first place, is because we want to expose the students that are under the tutelage of these professors that are very political. We want to expose them to different perspectives and show them that there's not a monopoly on this narrative anymore. Because that's what it's become. It's simply a narrative. Um, and I want to bring both sides to this because I don't want to create an echo chamber, and I don't want to do the same thing that hyper-partisan liberals have been doing to conservatives and even people on the fence. Um, it goes into things like anti-theism. It's not enough that you don't believe. You have to be actively against religion. And I think it's it doesn't really do any good because it just becomes a shouting match. The only people you're going to convince are people that are already on the fence about their own beliefs. And trying to dictate what they should and shouldn't think is simply wrong. Now, in the spring, we will be discussing issues with people like Michael Tracy, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, Ariana Rollins, Cassie Dillon, Oliver Darcy, Alan Bakari, Pastor Mark Burns, Some Dumb American is coming back, Mara Jane, a bit of Brit, and a few others that are escaping me right now, but it is a long list, and hopefully you guys see some other faces from the organization rather than just me all the time. And I'm trying to see if we can get Gavin McInnes back. And it should just be I hope we've gotten enough liberals so that we can also hear like the holes in our own perspectives and our worldview, because that's what this is all about. It's not rah 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 for one team. If we're going to move the nation in the best interest of the people, we need to have the best ideas, not simply because they're painted blue or red. And yeah, I think that is all we have for now. I apologize for not covering the local protests. I did come down with a sinus infection. It was not cute. But we will see you guys soon. Thank you.